Someone once said that love looks forward, hate looks back, and anxiety has eyes all over its head. I think you can see that I spend most of my time in that third state, anxiety. I'm someone who worries what will happen if I forget to floss my teeth tonight. I wake up in hotel rooms checking myself for bedbug bites. My days are filled with 101 worries. And so I'm fascinated by individuals who voluntarily take on gigantic problems, who add great worries to their lives. People like the lone protester standing in front of the tanks in Tiananmen Square, China, 1989. What was that guy thinking? How could that frail man take on a brutal army? Already in college, I began to assemble the names of such individuals, of martyred heroes. I wrote them on the wall of my dorm room. And now, as a social anthropologist, I ponder the power and beauty of such lives. They have changed the way I think about what it is to be a human being. I want to introduce you to some of my heroes. For example, Malala Yousafzai. How many of you know her? I don't mean know her personally, but have read of her. So, some of you. It is the winter of 2009 in the Swat Valley in Pakistan. The Taliban extremists are blowing up girls' schools, more than 100 of them, splashing acid in the faces of girls trying to go to school. In London, the BBC editors think that it would be interesting to have a blog written by a schoolgirl in the Swat Valley. It would be sort of like Anne Frank's diary. Their local fixers ask around, but nobody wants to write such a blog. Even anonymously, it could be dangerous if one was found out. And then 11-year-old Malala says, "Yes, I'll do it." She begins by writing of an 11-year-old's concerns, such as how the Taliban cut off the cable network so she can no longer follow her favorite drama, My Dream Boy Will Come to Marry Me. She also writes of frightening moments. I quote, "On my way home from school, I heard a man saying, 'I will kill you.' I hastened my pace. To my utter relief, he was talking on his mobile phone and must have been threatening someone else." Gradually, the situation in the Swat Valley became calmer. Malala described her feelings. The Taliban had been pushed out of the valley. I quote, "I used to dream of becoming famous, to see my valley freed from the clutches of the Taliban, to see girls flying like butterflies, free from any restrictions. It is becoming as a reality, so I am happy, happy, and very happy," she wrote. At that time, she began to speak out using her real name, admitted that it was she who had written the blog. After an interview on web television, she wrote to the journalist an email in all capitals, "I want an access to the world of knowledge." And she signed it, "Your small video star." It was on the 9th of October last year that Malala and her schoolmates were on the school bus going home after an exam, singing Pashtun folk songs. Two armed militants stopped the school bus. One of them got on and yelled, "Which one of you is Malala? Speak up or I'll shoot you all." He found her. He shot her in the head and neck. After a week in local hospitals, Malala was flown in a coma to a hospital in Birmingham, England, that had a specialty in gunshot wounds to the brain. Months of operations took place and she survived. And when Malala was attacked, there was a wave of love and sympathy for her through the whole world. People collecting money for her medical care. She was on the cover of Newsweek, Malala, the bravest girl in the world, twice on the cover of Time. Almost 1 million people nominated her for the Nobel Peace Prize, as did every political party of Canada. And it's striking how when somebody is willing to risk her life for the common good, it makes such a deep impression on the rest of us. The psychologist William James pondered that phenomenon in 1902, and he wrote that when we meet someone who has risked her life in this altruistic way, we consider her to be our born superior. So great is our respect. And James went on to say that such people have, in some sense, touched the mystery of existence. He doesn't explain what that mystery is, but I think it might be this, to borrow a thought from Cesar Chavez: to be human is to suffer for others. God help us to be human. I think of another person who awakens strong feelings, Sophie Scholl, born in the town of Ulm in Germany, the same town where Albert Einstein was born. She started as a student at the University of Munich in 1942. Her brother was already there. They had a wonderful student life, discussions into the evening, dinner parties, theater. But gradually she and her brother and a few friends learned more and more of what their country, Nazi Germany, was doing at the time, mass executions of Jews and others, and they decided they had to do something about it. They wrote pamphlets against Hitler's regime, and with a hand-cranked mimeograph machine, made thousands of copies that they distributed secretly around Munich. They knew this was dangerous. One day, Sophie and her brother were leaving piles of pamphlets in secret around the university when a guard saw them, ran after them, grabbed them, and took them into the Gestapo. Sophie and her brother Hans and their small group of allies were beheaded. A few years ago, there was a survey in Germany of Germans between the ages of 18 and 40, asking who was the greatest German of all time. And the results came back. The greatest German of all time was Sophie Scholl and Hans Scholl, ahead of Bach, Beethoven, and Albert Einstein. I used to teach a course about civic courage and engagement at Harvard. The course attracted more than 600 students per term. Friends say that my ego has never recovered from that time, and they're right. Boston Magazine wrote of the course. They said that it led the students toward St. Francis-style sainthood. The magazine continued, the course is taught by the slim, wispy-voiced, and vaguely monkish Brian Palmer. And I thought to myself, how did they find out so much about me? We invited guests to the course who had shown great courage to interview them about their work. And I found that the students often wanted to follow along with these guests in their endeavors. And it struck me then that courage can be almost as contagious as fear. But some examples of courage should perhaps carry a warning: don't try this at home. I think of Witold Pilecki. He and his wife and their 2 children had a farm in the Polish countryside. He was trained as a musician. He also did volunteer work. And they had an idyllic life there until something happened. September 1939, the Germans invaded Poland. Witold joined the resistance. After a year, there were rumors circulating about a prison camp that the Germans had established in Poland in a town called Auschwitz. It was said to be a place of extraordinary brutality, but no one knew the details. And Witold felt that it was important for the Polish underground and for everyone who was standing against the Nazis to know what was happening in Auschwitz. So he volunteered to go in. He waited till a day when the Germans were rounding up Jews and political opponents in a square in Warsaw, and he ran into the group so that he would also be taken prisoner. And his plan was to smuggle out messages when he could. Already after a few days, the first message arrived. He described how a guard had become irritated with him and hit him in the face with a metal rod. "I spat out my 2 front teeth," he wrote. "Bleeding began." It didn't get any better for the next 947 days while he was there. Eventually, he was able to escape, making a run for it, getting shot in the shoulder, but surviving. And he came home to his wife and children again. After the war ended, Witold couldn't accept Soviet domination of Poland, joined the resistance once more, was caught, tortured at length, and executed. Witold, you haunt me. I can't understand how someone would voluntarily go into Auschwitz. Go to the places that scare you, said the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. And civic courage is often about going in a different direction than everyone else. The firefighters running up the World Trade Center towers when everyone else is trying to run down. We try also to take up examples of courage in everyday situations, such as Wesley Outry, an African-American construction worker. He was at a subway station in New York. A man on the platform had a seizure and tumbled down onto the tracks just as the train was coming in. Wesley jumped down. He pushed the other man in the space between the 2 metal rails and pinned him there. The train ran over both men. Neither was harmed. They were there waiting for the rescue crews for half an hour. And Wesley said it was one of the more unusual conversations of his life because the other man didn't understand why he was under a New York City subway train being hugged by a stranger. Or also in New York, I think of a situation on the number 6 train. A man had been attacking a woman Another man stood between the victim and the attacker to stop the fight, and while doing so, he continued to eat his nachos from a little tray nonchalantly to calm down the atmosphere. He went into YouTube history forever as Snack Man. With great nachos comes great responsibility, as someone commented. But with or without nachos, it's people like this. It's people like this who pull me back from the abyss of despair, who remind me that in our world of brutality and of indifference to others' suffering, it is still possible for our human species to shine this magnificently. Yes, Malala. Yes, Sophie. Yes, Witold. I believe in your secret conspiracy of hope.